Diversity is the spice of life that turns our monochromatic existence into a lively one, full of color, music and what's not. By spicing things up, not only might we learn a new skill or experience something we haven't before, but we might also learn something new about ourselves. However, some of us might not be brave enough to face change, being afraid of the unknown dangers that this new path holds for them. Me, for example, am riding a comfortable path for now, so why go to another topic? Why not stay with the Tales series? For now, there are no brakes on this Tales train, and trying to stop it now while we're going full steam ahead will only be a waste of effort. The Tales series has enough branching trails that lead to destinations not yet explored, so let me be the machinist that takes you on a journey all throughout this wonderful franchise. The first stop was Vesperia, the next, Dawn of the New World. Oh boy, going from one of the most universally beloved and by now infamous seas of Vesperia to the most controversial barren wasteland that lays before us, Dawn of the New World. Dawn is by many fans considered to be the black sheep of the family, one who is often not even worth mentioning. It's a weird game in that it's a direct sequel to Symphonia, but it's regarded as a spin-off instead of a main game, even though it lays a direct link between Symphonia and Fantasia, and has characters from Symphonia reappearing as playable party members, although they don't level up the same way the normal protagonists do, and to make up for that you have to rely on monsters, and is this Shin Megami Tensei? Did someone from Atlas get their hands on it or something? Regardless, it's such a different experience from anything in the franchise, and that just wasn't well received by the people who had played previous entries. However that may be, I have a different stance on Dawn of the New Worlds. Are you ready? I think it's not that bad. I would even consider it to be one of my favorite games in the franchise, and while it might sound very much like my brain development halted at the age of 7, hopefully by the end of the video I have been able to offer you a different perspective on one of the most hated games in the series. I'll be going over the characters and story along with other things and highlight both the positives as well as the issues Dawn has, and explain why I think Dawn of the New World is not as bad as people are making it out to be. Tales of Symphonia, the original one, was a fantastic game, my absolute number one in the series. The story, great, the characters amazing, the combat could be better but it's still good, and the ending was an absolute banger with a nearly 100-hour journey in which you shatter convention upon convention, coming to a spectacular end, with the two parallel worlds of Sylvarant and Teve'ala fusing as one, breaking the endless cycle of sacrifice and thus saving the worlds. That was supposed to be the end of it, the ideal situation that our heroes strived for, a world in which no one had to be sacrificed for the sake of another anymore. But is that truly how the story would end? Would life just casually stroll along like nothing happens? Let me put it this way, when two different worlds, one of which having a 1000-year lead in economics, politics and technology, are mixed by a sudden invisible force, then how positive will the results truly be? It's one of the questions that was never answered in Symphonia, as the major conflict had been resolved already and it seemed like peace had been restored. However, reality would dictate otherwise, as sudden change, especially to this magnitude, brings with it but one thing: chaos. Thinking logically, there would be no way in hell that the situation with conditions like these would end peacefully. The Teve'alans look down upon the Sylvaranti due to their inferior technology, and the Sylvaranti in turn set up their own resistance in fear of being subjugated by the Teve'alans. You don't have to look too deep into the game just to see how fucked up the situation has become, as the game opens with a literal blood purge, a ploy set up by one side to tarnish the other. The more you travel the lands, the more you witness the ever-growing division between the races and through which lengths they will go to put each other down. To make matters even worse, due to the fusion of the two worlds, nature is in turmoil. Snow descends upon deserts, lakes suddenly evaporate, monsters have started to roam the land and causing disturbance, slaughter and even more nature anomalies. Everyone is on edge with one more move potentially resulting in an all-out civil war. The regeneration, the salvation of the world might have eliminated the cycle of mana disparity versus mana abundance and has thus ended the uneven distribution of prosperity, but has ironically put humanity into more destruction, desolation and bloodshed than it has ever been before. And that is what I find so interesting. Dawn of the New World takes Symphonia's one open plot point, the one thread that was created at the end but never unraveled, and unfolds it, showing us firsthand the repercussions that the regeneration of the world brings with it. But not only does Dawn show us the consequences of change, it also highlights a more personal side of change, namely how a person can change into someone better. Which brings us to the protagonist of the game, Emil Castanier. Emil has been my favorite character in Tales ever since I picked up Dawn of the New World, and no protagonist after has ever left the same impact on me as he has. He is a fascinating character, excellently portraying the themes of the game as he naturally grows from an insecure loner into a real man. Character growth is his biggest strength. At the start of the game, Emil is quite literally an emotional mess. His parents were brutally murdered in front of his eyes, not just by anyone, but by the one and only Lloyd Irving, the guy referred to as the hero of the world. It causes Emil to hold a pure hatred towards Lloyd, one that can't be fanned as the whole world worships the hero of regeneration. Whenever he does though, he is greeted with both physical and mental abuse, as we see in the beginning of the game with the two boys who try to forcefully make Emil pledge his loyalty to Lloyd's statue. To add to the resentment, since Emil's arrival, the village has been plagued by monsters, something the villagers wrongfully accuse Emil to be the cause of. This causes everyone, even his aunt and uncle, which he stays with, to see Emil as a sign of bad omen, which in turn starts a vicious daily cycle of mental and physical abuse. This new world Emil has stepped into doesn't want him, and it causes him to fall into a bottomless pit of self-loathing and cowardice. All of this changes, however, when he meets his lover Richter Albans and his stalker Marta Looney. Wait, I mean his lover Marta Looney and his... You know what, it works both ways. They are the first two people who tell him to stand up for himself, Richter even giving him his iconic catchphrase, "Courage is the magic that turns dreams into reality." Some might think of this catchphrase as annoying, as it is repeated a lot of times throughout Emil's journey, but I think the quote is essential for his growth. We've all been there, moments in which we cannot act as we are paralyzed by fear, even if what we have to face isn't all that scary at all. To surpass that fear, we need just a tiny bit of motivation, something to believe in that gets the ball rolling. And when the ball starts rolling, when you take that first step, the rest is sure to follow. That's the quote for Emil. It's a tiny bit of courage from the one person who stood up for him, something to believe in when he can't believe in himself. And it helps him grow. Emil isn't a character who changes overnight. He stumbles, he makes mistakes, but he learns from them, and while the steps he takes toward becoming a better person are small, they are consistent and they accumulate. What makes Emil so different from other protagonists in the franchise is that there isn't a real turning point or major event that happens that drastically changes who he is, like with Luke for example. Luke's actions causes him to reflect on himself, vowing that he will become a different, better person. He puts on a mask and gradually grows into it. Emil, on the other hand, is able to become a better person because of the experiences he goes through. The people he meets believe in him, and in turn he starts to be able to believe in himself. However, Emil's progression isn't always clearly visible, especially if you haven't done Dawn's dreaded side quests, some of the most poorly implemented side quests in all of gaming. And I don't say this because I think the content of the side quests are in particularly bad. The content itself is fine. No, I say this because the side quests are just so damn missable! The game often tells you where you need to go to progress the story. After you defeat the Light Frog in Isolde, you're given the choice to take the boat to Flanor, as that is your next destination. As tempting as it is to progress the story, do not go there, because the moment the boat sets off, your chance to activate the Richter side quest will forever be lost. It's such a weird moment for a side quest to occur, especially since you're in a hurry as Lloyd is still on the loose, but instead of progressing the story, instead you're expected to go to Hockenisia Peak, because Mr. Redhead is there, for some reason. If the game established that Richter would be at Hockenisia Peak, or hell, if they established the existence of optional side quests at all, this wouldn't be such a big issue, but when a trigger flag is forcefully shoved so seemingly random into a flow of events like here, it points to bad game design. It's dumb really, because there's so much interesting information to be found in these side quests, not just about Emil but also minor and big antagonists. Alice's parents got slaughtered by monsters when she was only a kid, and so Alice spent most of her childhood at an orphanage, where she was bullied for being a half-elf. Her parents' deaths and the constant bullying caused her to develop her twisted ideology of only the strong can survive in this world and the weak can be used as she sees fit. To acquire power, she makes a pact with a demon in exchange for the Forbidden Tome of Demon Lords, granting her control over monsters. For 8 years before Dawn's events, Dex was almost killed for wrongful accusations of robbery, only to be saved by Alice. And with saved, I mean that she kind of burned the whole orphanage down. Both Alice and Dex are the byproducts of a world that did not want them. However, unlike with Emil, they didn't have someone to put them on the right track. And all of that you wouldn't know if you didn't do their side quests. Like, yes, the backstory alone doesn't make them great characters, but it does give them a reason for both of their motivations and how they became the people they are today. No matter how hard I try though, Dawn's policy towards side quests simply cannot be redeemed. However, this is not the only bad thing about the game. The biggest criticism that people have for disliking Dawn is that it's disappointing. There are only 2 new playable characters, not counting the dreadfully implemented ally monster system. The story mode is one of the shortest in the franchise, and you can really see the lack of polish in multiple areas, from the battle system to the stiff character movement. Like I said previously, Dawn of the New World is an odd bird amongst odd birds. It fits in the same picture as the Tales game, but it doesn't feel like a real Tales game. It's almost like it was never meant to be a real main entry in the first place. And I might have the explanation for that. In a 2008 interview by the Nintendo World Report, Dawn's director and producer Teruyaki Konishi states the following. Tales of Symphonia is one of the most popular RPGs worldwide, so there was a lot of demand from fans for us to produce a follow-up. We were fortunate to have a storyline and cast of characters that allowed us to easily transition to a sequel, because we always planned for the original Tales of Symphonia to be a stand-alone game. In another interview by Games Radar from 2018 with another one of Dawn's producers, and I hope I pronounced this right, Tsutomu Gouda talks about why they chose to include monsters into your party lineup instead of a traditional set of characters. We had originally designed the game as a side story entry in the series, which gives us more flexibility in implementing this style of gameplay mechanic. However, we later decided to give the game more story elements and a greater tie to the original Tales of Symphonia, but wanted to keep the monster collection mechanic as well. We feel it adds a lot to the game and hope fans enjoy it. To summarize, Dawn of the New World was never supposed to be the next big project the Tales team worked on. That of course would be Tales of Vesperia, which was developed during the same time period. This caused the team to split, with the older, more experienced members being selected to work on Vesperia and the lesser experienced staff banding together to create Dawn of the New World. The interviews confirm that Dawn was a side entry in the franchise. The divide of the development team confirms it was never on the priorities list. I feel like this is where most of the problems originate from. A lack of experience, time and priority. And I feel like this is also why Dawn feels so different from Symphonia, even though they take place in the same universe and even though you meet the same people. Symphonia's original cast is a shadow of what it was in this new game. Other than Rain and Lloyd, the formerly known party members don't serve a real purpose here other than being a guide for Emil and Marta. Me not having played Symphonia beforehand couldn't quite understand the gravity of this situation. Lloyd and co are the heroes many spent hours with, learned to know and might even have bonded with on an intersocial level. To feel anything other than disappointment upon seeing them reduced to mere civilians that hop in and out of your party is almost inevitable, because Dawn of the New World is not Symphonia 2. It's Dawn of the New World, Emil, Marta and this new world's story. And that's also the problem. Earlier I said that Emil is one of the strongest assets this game has to offer, as his character development is just so well done. He is given all the time in the world to slowly grow into a confident shonen demigod. Almost everything that happens in the game is either because of Emil or is about Emil, giving the side characters little room to make anything of a meaningful impact. I'm one of the few maniacs who is stupid enough to like Emil, but a lot of other people just don't. He is labeled the 4th most annoying JRPG protagonist, as many fans were put off by his admittedly pitiful introduction and constant wailing. So here's a question: if the one character who is given all the spotlight is the one you most despise, in this case Emil, then who else is there to latch onto? Marta Lundy is an alright character, but I think it's a bit hard to attach yourself to someone who is already hot glued to someone else. Alice and Dex are interesting foils, but suffer from the infamous side quest curse. Tenebrae is great. He's an incredibly sassy 1000-year-old DT/cat, and as we all know, cats are real jerks, so conversations involving him result in some of the best banter in the franchise. Ironically enough, he is also a master of foreshadowing. That doesn't really make him a great character, I just wanted to make the pun. But I have a hard time seeing him as anything other than a mascot character. However, when you do take side quests into the equation, I think that the most interesting character aside from Emil is the main antagonist himself, Richter Abend. Playing the game again made me appreciate how great of a character Richter is in the first place. He's another victim of the former world's discrimination towards half-elves, just like Alice, and it made him cynical of humans. The only thing that kept him from outright despising them was his one and only friend Esther, a human being who didn't care about Richter's origin and just saw him for who he was. A good guy who was put through misery for all the wrong reasons. Esther was to Richter what Marta and Richter were to Emil, and what Dex and Alice were to each other. A pillar of support when no one in the world would support them. A pillar that was abruptly torn to the ground when Esther's life ended by the hands of Ratatosk. What I find interesting about Richter's character is that he doesn't become another maniacal destructionist, but actively seeks a way to bring back the life of a person taken from him. And yes, while his methods might reach the extreme sometimes, for example him manipulating Brute to spread chaos through the land, he never seemed to relish in the spilling of blood. Better yet, it feels like he would have preferred not spilling any blood at all, evident by the fact that he let Marta go so many times. While some of you might see the "I will kill you but not today" scenes as inconsistent character writing, I think that Richter's struggle to kill Marta, and especially Emil, is what makes him feel so real in the first place. Richter sees his friend in Emil, and rightfully so, because Emil took Esther's appearance. For him, Emil isn't only a reminder of what he used to be, a scared, bullied kid who was abandoned by the world, but also a way to cope with the passing of his best friend. He almost sees Emil as his friend being brought back to life, and goes on these missions with him to forget that his friend has long since passed on. The moment you come to know about the existence of Esther, so many of the weird scenes recontextualize in an almost tragic show of character. Yes, Richter is sympathetic towards Emil because he sees himself in him, and that's one of the reasons why he let him live, but I think the biggest reason why he doesn't outright kill him is because he couldn't stand the sight of seeing his best friends being murdered all over again. Richter isn't a bad guy who just wants to see the world burn. He is a victim of the world's policy towards half-elves, a broken man who lost his best friend when they were trying so hard to save the world, and someone who would dedicate themselves to finding a way to bring that life back. But he is also a human who can care about other people's well-being. He is capable of laughter, he is capable of making the most horrendous food imaginable.
Mom, wait for me. I'll be joining you shortly.
I was afraid of that. This is the first time I've ever cooked.
He had the literal opportunity to wreak vengeance on all of mankind, but instead the only thing he wants is to get his friend back. And kill Ratatosk.
Die!
He would go as far as suffering excruciating pain for 3,000 years just to achieve that goal. And I think all of this speaks volumes of how much thought was put into this one character. Dawn of the New World is not a perfect game, it might not even be a great game. Some changes are just not welcome, no matter how you slice it, and there were a couple of plot points that were just really dumb. Like that Lloyd had to withhold all information about this action to protect the New World 3 instead of just saying, hey guys, you know, I can't tell you what is going on, but I'm on your side, you know. Or that one scene with Sheena and her bullshit no jutsu. But if you take the game for what it really is, its own story that just so happens to be set in the same universe as Symphonia, instead of being Symphonia 2, I reckon you will have a much better experience. So for those of you who didn't enjoy the game, play it again just with zero expectations at all. And maybe Dawn of the New World is not as bad as you remembered it to be. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this video. If you enjoyed the video, cracked a laugh, or thought, hey, this guy made an okay point for once in his life, consider giving the video a like as it greatly helps the channel.